Welcome back to another episode of the Creative Commerce Podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Scott from jeffreyscottmedia.com. And on this episode, it's going to be focused on AI and how you can use it in the video and photo game. There's so many more new uses that you can explore in your creative workflow using AI. It's not just text-based stuff anymore. It can expand into photo and video and creative things. You know, AI and technology is changing almost every day, changes every week, every month. So it's important to stay up to date with it so you don't get left behind. Like, my greatest fear is getting old and not being able to use basic technology, like your grandparents not even able to use an iPhone or like basic computer programs. Like, that scares me. I want to be able to know what I can use and what technology is out there for me to use and understand it. I've talked about AI before, but that was back in the day with just text-based stuff. And I say back in the day because that was just a few months ago. You know, AI is rapidly changing and new features are coming out. It's almost sort of scary with how quick AI is evolving and developing. And it's definitely making people very scared for their own jobs and stuff. They're scared that they're going to lose their job to a robot. I don't think that'll be the case because I think AI will just be something that's going to be integrated into the natural workflow of things. And it's just going to come down to who can use AI the best and who can't. And the people who aren't are going to be replaced by the people who can use it, because AI just speeds things up and improves the workflow. So if you've got somebody who uses AI to create stuff, text, photo, video-based stuff, and they can get the same thing done probably 5 times faster than the guy who doesn't, he does it himself, then I think an employer would rather have the guy who could do the same amount of work 5 times quicker. So if you're scared about the AI or the robots taking over and replacing jobs, I don't think that's going to happen. It's just down to who are the people who jump on things early, learn it, understand it, and use it to their advantage. Again, I just think it'll be a race to see who can learn it the fastest and who can use it the best way. Anyway, long intro, but let's get into the gear update. On this gear update, I wanted to feature the new Mica 85mm f1.4 full-frame autofocus lens. This new lens will unfortunately be available for only Sony E and Nikon Z mounts, so I'm Canon, so won't benefit me. Its key feature is the 1.4 aperture, 85mm focal length. It's lightweight and has an APS-C angle of view. This lens has a STM stepping motor, which is claimed to produce silent and smooth focusing. The lens also supports electronic aperture adjustment and EXIF information transmission. I mean, this all sounds cool and stuff. We know the nifty 50, the 50mm 1.8, so this is possibly even more impressive with a wider aperture and longer focal range. At 85mm and 1.4 aperture, I feel like this could be used for multiple different uses. I mean, 85mm isn't too close to be a portrait lens, but it also isn't close enough to shoot like sports or nature far away. It just seems like it's in the middle because of that focal range. But I mean, hey, it's a nice feature, and I think you could just use it for whatever situation you'd really want to use it for, especially with the 1.4 aperture again. That's a really nice feature, and you would definitely pull off that portrait look if you wanted to use it for that. The Mica 85mm f1.4 full-frame autofocus lens is now available for $469.99 on their website. So now let's get into the inspiration insight. For this inspiration insight, I want to challenge you to experiment with lighting angles. So we all know that it's very important to light your scene and make sure everything's well balanced, the exposure, things like that. But let's switch it up. Let's go for something that conveys a certain mood or emotion. Light can really play with that and enhance the way you tell a story in a photo or video. You can also angle it like above or below or to the side to get a certain effect on your subject's face. Going with that, one of the most popular ones that I can think of off the top of my head is called Rembrandt lighting. I'll put a picture on screen of this if you're watching on YouTube, but here's an interesting effect. It's pretty impressive and very interesting to look at. It's used a lot in movies, and it creates a little triangle on the subject's face. Just adds a little bit more depth and kind of like an artistic feature to playing with light. Lighting isn't just a tool to brighten things up. It can be used creatively, just like any other tool, like with color, your camera itself, especially with aperture, shutter speed with motion. It's just another dynamic thing that you could use to artistically tell a story, show an emotion, things like that. If you want a specific challenge, then I would go for creating the Rembrandt triangle, that lighting pattern on somebody's face. Try to figure it out with your lighting setup. Probably takes like 2 or 3 lights or something like that. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube and stuff, so you can mess around with different lighting angles and little patterns you can create with light. If you want to share your content and be featured on the next episode, use #InspirationInsight and tag me in your post. So let's get into the main topic of AI tools in the video and photo game. So as I was talking about earlier, AI has just always been rapidly changing and developing, not only with ChatGPT, which is, how everybody probably figured out or found out about AI and its powerful tools, but lots of other sites are popping up for creators specifically to use tools to edit videos and photos and just enhance the workflow. So let's not be left behind in the tech world and learn about these new tools and how we could use them to our advantage and how we can get ahead of the crowd to be more productive and offer more than we would typically offer. From creating photos and videos from scratch with using AI or using AI editing automation tools, AI has developed a ton over just the past few months. I think one of the features that came out recently that most people probably have seen was Photoshop 2024's update with generative fill. For those who aren't in the creative space or use the Adobe line of products, you've probably seen it on TikTok, Instagram, and people automatically using AI to expand an image or remove something, things like that, just by typing something in and then having it appear or do the edit. Things that used to be really, really hard using like content-aware fill or things like that have become super, super easy by just selecting what you want to get rid of or add and just literally typing it in and hit generate, and it just does it for you. I've loved using generative fill. It's made my workflow much faster. I'm able to remove so many more things and add things in that content-aware fill wouldn't be able to do. Content-aware fill just seems pretty obsolete now. Like, here's a picture, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting it on the screen. Here's a picture I took of a building, and you can see there are many, many cables and telephone lines. But with Photoshop's AI, it removed all of them and removed and replaced everything that would have been behind them. So it just kind of figured that out by looking at the image overall, removing everything and adding things in. So I've taken a busy image that had tons of things in the way that I couldn't really control, and I was able to get what I wanted out of the image. It's really amazing. And here's another picture I took of a grad for a graduation shoot. And I'm sure we've all experienced the overexposed background with like bright white skies. You've dialed in your exposure on your subject, obviously, and maybe the surroundings, but that sky, it's going to be so bright. But, anyways, with generative fill, I was able to blend in a pretty blue sky right behind the grad, and it looks way better. It's not natural, it's not real, but it looks way better. It's art. I've even generated images from scratch with Photoshop. I'll just select my blank canvas and type in what I want, generate it, copy and paste it into my main composition, and then it works. Like, you can straight up generate your own assets now to add into your compositions instead of just looking on Google for free assets or things like that, stock images. Like, I've definitely had that annoyance of not finding that perfect asset that I wanted for either photo or video. But now I can just literally go into Photoshop, type in what I want, get different variations that it generates, and get the perfect one that I want and copy and paste it. Especially for different sizes, if I wanted something sized up. Like, if there was an image on Google that wasn't my favorite because it was a low resolution, just go into Photoshop, generate that asset in a bigger canvas size, and there you go. On the video side, I found this AI auto editing tool called Autopod, and it's mainly used to edit podcasts. You can just download their plugin, set up your timeline with your shots, set up and sync the audio, and if it's for a multicam podcast, it'll automatically switch back and forth of who's speaking and who's not. It'll even like cut the gaps and just make all these kind of cuts. Like, you could watch videos on YouTube of it working, and it just cuts so many times on the timelines, moves things around, kind of makes the decisions for you really, really quick of what to show, what not to show, where to cut. It's really fast and it's really impressive, and it'll just chop through everything. And it'll definitely save you hours of editing time just down to a few minutes of it doing its thing. It definitely costs money, but it may be worth it depending on how much podcast content you create and if you really need to save that time. Again, it's just a plugin. You just go and pay for it and download it, and then you can just integrate it into your normal workflow if that's what you do. And I'm sure other auto editing things will come out too. I mean, this is specifically made for podcasts, but with seeing how that works, what could be done for other editing tools? And you might be thinking, oh, that'll replace the job of an editor. Well, an editor can take on more clients and more work if he can save more time with using those tools. So it won't make the editor go out of a job. It'll just bring him more jobs because he can do more work. Instead of spending like 5 hours on a project, it'll just go down to maybe 5 minutes with an auto editor. So imagine how much more time that guy has to take on more work that he probably couldn't have. Imagine being the go-to guy to get something really quick with a quick turnaround time, and he gets all the work. I think that's the view that we need to think of with AI. It's a huge opportunity. Not only that it saves so much time, but you can jump on it so early right now. It's kind of like with stocks and investing. It's like, oh, I wish I would have invested in this earlier because the price went up now. It's like, well, this is something new. This is a new technology that is going to enhance everybody's workflow and something that you would need to jump on now to not be left behind in the future. It's something that you can definitely build off of now. Anyway, also with video, with more AI video tools, I've mentioned this site before, but Opus Clip is constantly improving. Opus is what I use to curate all of my clips and my content from my highlights that I post daily. And it's what I use to create all my short form content. You just copy and paste a YouTube link into it, and it'll automatically create subtitled clips that may perform well or even trend on social media. Its AI is very impressive, and the subtitling and animations are even more impressive. When I first started using it, never had a watermark or anything because it was new. Just the subtitles would just come up as just regular text, no fancy animations, some highlights here and there. But now they've improved so much just over a few months that they're having new payment plans. The free plans have watermarks, and there's new animations and editing tools that you can do now. It's expanded so much. They're constantly adding new features, and every update is better and better. I get like a ping in their Discord because that's the only way you can get support, because I've had to go in there and talk on the Discord to get some help from an admin or something. But yeah, I get pinged with new updates from their Discord and just new features that are mind-blowing. Things that would save so much time to a short-form editor. I create content, I do freelance work. I don't really find the importance for me to fully invest my time into short form editing. So since there's an AI that can do it for me in just a matter of minutes, and I could just download those clips and make a few edits here and there, I don't have to go through my entire podcast, look for clippable moments, clip it myself, add those animations and subtitles, all that stuff. This just saves me all that time for it to find it itself, add the text, and I could just cut things up here and there if I wanted to and just upload it. With Opus Clip, I think currently they're working on adding automatic B-roll with AI. So the AI will look at what you're talking about and automatically add B-roll that relates to what you're talking about. B-roll and new shots every couple of seconds would definitely increase engagement and watch time. I think that goes for any video, like you're watching an interview or a testimony. You got the person talking, but showing what they're actually talking about is something else that engages you to look at instead of just their face. Of course, not everything is free, so for the advanced features you'd have to pay, but for the basic functions and to have a watermark, you can use it for free, and I think you get 90 minutes of upload time per month. So if you're not creating content that much, and even though I'm creating podcasts every week, that 90 minutes per month actually is pretty good. I'm not going to pay until I really have to pay, or there's some crazy features that I would want to pay for. I don't even pay for chat yet. There's nothing that I've really seen that makes me want to pay for it. Depending on what you need help with creating, or based on the scope of your project, I'm sure that you can now look up an AI for what you specifically want to do. Even ChatGPT is working to let you create your own GPT AI, even just for your own specific use cases. Like creating a GPT that specifically creates stickers, or an AI that specifically tutors you in a specific kind of math, like statistics or whatever. I'm sure we all know that ChatGPT has its limitations and can get confused if you don't give it the right amount of context, but if you pre-program the context into your own GPT AI, then you'll never have to update its information. You can always go to it for whatever you're looking to create or your specific use case to help you out with. It's almost like creating your own personal assistant that will never forget the purpose of why you're using it. Also, with the GPT capabilities of DALL-E, you can generate images right in ChatGPT. So now they're also kind of getting in on the photo video side. I haven't seen video yet, but definitely photo side, because I know they have like a new default like sticker GPT. So imagine the branding that you can get into with products, labeling, things like that. I bet more features and use cases will come in the future with the expansive GPT and them always creating new AI features, but those are just some of the ones that I've seen recently that are new, and they're allowing their users who pay for ChatGPT to kind of experiment and create their own AI. One more AI that's helped me a lot is Adobe Podcast. This AI takes your audio and makes it podcast studio quality. So if you didn't have a setup like mine with this mic or anything, and you just recorded on your phone, or even if you recorded in camera with your mic camera audio. I'm pretty far from my camera, probably about 5 feet or so. And we all know that built-in camera mics aren't very good, but you can be in an echoey room with that camera mic or just any terrible mic, and it can take it, remove all that noise, and make it sound like you're talking through a studio microphone, podcast microphone like this one. I'm pretty sure they have a demo example on their site, and you can switch between the AI on or AI off. So then you can hear the difference between the sample audio they give you and then what's processed through Adobe Podcast, and it's very impressive. I use it all the time for work I do for other clients who need voice work. Either I record for them or they send me their recordings and I'll mix and master their audio for them, but really I'm just putting it into Adobe Podcast. It doesn't even take long. It just takes a couple minutes. Like I'll put an entire almost hour-long podcast into Adobe Podcast and it'll come out in just a couple minutes, sounding very clear throughout. I mean, Adobe Podcast isn't just for podcasts. Well, of course they made it to make it easier for those to create a podcast without having any great equipment. Even just talking to their phone, they can upload it and it sounds like a professionally made podcast. But again, you can drag and drop any audio file that you want into this thing, no matter the length. It doesn't have to be really long like a podcast. It can be really short, just a little voiceover or something, and it'll pop it back out with something great for you to use. Its noise removal and voice enhancement technology is incredible. I can't wrap my mind around it. It always comes out really great. And if it sounds kind of robotic, or if you want it to sound even more studio-like, there's like a drag bar that you can choose the enhancement quality, like 90% enhanced, or you can drag it down. So, there's things that you can mess with it if you really want to hone in on how you want it to sound. Because not everybody would want this like studio podcast bassy sound, right? So if you just wanted it to clean up some stuff, you can just drag that down to maybe 20-50% enhancement. Just go ahead and give it a try with your own audio. Just look up Adobe Podcast and you should see the enhanced speech thing. I don't know if you need to be a Adobe subscriber or not. I think there might be a limit if you want to use it for free, but I'm sure even if you couldn't use it, then you could find the sample that's on there for you to hear the difference. But I'm pretty sure you can use it for a bit as a free user. All of these new photo and video and audio tools are all that I've seen so far with AI, so feel free to educate me on the other AI tools that are out there that I haven't covered that help you through your own creative workflow. I'm always looking for things that help my workflow, things that I don't want to be missed out on. I don't want to be left behind with technology and stuff. I want to be on it. I want to learn it. I want to be able to use it to my own advantage, because there may be tons of other people who don't jump on that and they're wasting their time doing it by hand instead of having a quality AI assistant do it for them so I could focus on other things. And I think that's what AI is all about. It's not here to take things over. It's not here to replace anybody. It's here to help yourself get better at a skill, learn things quicker, use it to do things quicker. It's all just to kind of improve workflow, speed things up, so then you can take on more work and have a consistent quality to it since it's done by a robot. Again, let me know any other AI tools that you've seen. I really want to check them out and see if I can adapt it into my own workflow. And with that, I guess let's get into the content spotlight. On this content spotlight, I want to feature somebody that is not very typical for this show and not someone I would normally spotlight. But in the last podcast, I joked about that I've recently been into collecting fragrances and colognes. So with that, seeing cool pictures of fragrances and scrolling around on Instagram and seeing all that is pretty fun since I'm into that hobby and like to see the nice bottles and just cool stuff like that. But with the creative photo side, it's a great composition and it's a pretty easy subject to take a picture of. I mean, it's kind of like product photography in a way. So a fragrance guy I follow on Instagram who takes cool pictures of his fragrances and even his watches that I want to feature is Matt from @mfragrances46. I mean, sure, it's just pictures of fragrance bottles and watches, but how he sets them up are really clean and minimal, and I really like that aesthetic. I really like how he sometimes uses a tray to lay out a couple of bottles and a complementary watch that matches with the color scheme. It's sort of like how us photo and video people like to see those top-down grid layout shots where everything's laid out on the floor and it's like a top-down shot of like a grid of all the gear and stuff. I mean, I think it's both equally shamed on both hobbies, that we like to see that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't think that this fragrance and watch stuff is weird if we're liking those pictures of those grid gear shots. But yeah, same thing, but with fragrances and watches and things like that. Sometimes he's holding a bottle, sometimes it's on a tray, but hey, it's very aesthetically pleasing. And even putting a plant in there for some green color, just messing with the colors, the composition, where things are laying, how it's placed on the tray, all of those go into account of how the composition is created. And the colors too, with the matching colors of the bottle or a complementary color of the watch. It's all things that kind of create the whole piece and composition together to make it look pleasing to the eye. Shamelessly, I actually took some pictures of my own with my own fragrance bottles and watches, and I'll be posting them on my Instagram. This inspired me to create my own content with my own collection, so definitely want to show it off because sunk way too much money into this, so I want to proudly show it off in a aesthetically pleasing way that I think looks cool. I especially like the tray. I think that was a very good idea. It just sort of seats everything nice and it frames it within a space within the image, whether it be a rectangular tray or a square tray. It just kind of creates that little space in the image for those things to reside. Anyway, if you want to see what I'm talking about, feel free to check out Matt on Instagram @mfragrances46. So now let's get down to business in the Business 101. So on this Business 101, I want to talk about investing in your appearance. Sort of like how I was talking about with the content spotlight, with the fragrances and the watches and stuff. Just basically the way you present yourself reflects everything. First impressions are everything, and when networking or working for those you may never work with again, that lasting first impression is very important. It's not just about looking good or smelling nice, but providing a great overall experience. I think it's important to invest in some nice pieces of clothing and fragrances, whether it be full-blown suits or just nice polos. Dressing the part, I think, is important to represent your professional image. For my fragrances, I use Joma Shop. That's Joma Shop. It's a discounter site where you could get hefty discounts off of retail prices for fragrances and watches. I mean, I could talk about fragrances all day, but that's not what this podcast is about. Just kind of putting out there that there are sites out there that are kind of gray market where you never have to pay retail price. There's some things out there that go for $300 a bottle for fragrances, but on Joma Shop or any other fragrance discount shops, you can get it for $100. It's kind of sketchy, but it's the real thing. Trust me. It's just kind of like you're paying the wholesale price of something instead of the full retail price. Kind of like the Sam's Costco effect, but of online retail and designer luxury stuff. Goes for clothing too. I know Joma Shop sells clothing, so, even watches. So if you're looking for some nice stuff, whether it be all those name brands like Burberry, Versace, Dior, stuff like that, if you're wanting to get into some stuff that are nicer, things that'll last, then definitely check that place out to see if the things that you've been wanting is on a nice discount. Again, I trust it. I've gotten a lot of my stuff from gray market discounter sites, but it's definitely saved me a ton of money when getting some nice stuff. It's not just about having the nice stuff, it's about getting stuff that is going to last a long time because you're paying for that quality. Again, getting a nice few pieces here and there is not bad. I'd rather have only a few nice things than a ton of cheap stuff that's going to break in just a couple months. Goes for shoes and stuff like that. You don't want to wear out your shoes if you're just getting it from like a cheap department store. Not saying like Macy's or TJ Maxx is bad, but I'd rather get some Prada, get some Dior, get some Burberry, get something that is really, really nice. Maybe super expensive, but again, discounter sites may come save you, but getting those really high quality, genuine products will pay off in its cost per use, I would think. I like to think of things how it would pay off every time I use it. I could get a $20 pair of sneakers, but how long is that going to last? I can get a $200 pair of sneakers, and maybe the cost per use will be better or even the same of getting those $20 sneakers. Anyway, I've personally been liking the old money aesthetic. So, polos, chinos, things like that. Look it up and see if that's something that you might like. It's kind of, professional looking, business casual, kind of like this shirt that I'm wearing right now. Kind of trying to change up my style a little bit because, I've been liking the cleaner, minimal look. It's not much of a business tip, but more self-improvement and presentation. I mean, it could go into business because it's presentation, first impressions, how you appear to somebody, if you look trustworthy or you look like you can do the job. It's kind of like the thing you hear all the time that you want to wear a suit to a nice job interview or something. It's the way you present yourself. Same thing with the little things of like fragrances, watches, your shoes, all those sort of things, haircuts even, it's things that you could style yourself. Everybody says don't judge a book by its cover, but on the inside with a unconscious bias, people are looking at you and judging you based on how you look, unfortunately. And that's just how business works. Thanks for watching another episode of the Creative Commerce Podcast. I hope you learned some stuff about AI. Feel free to educate me about things about AI. Shared some fashion tips too. New episodes every week on YouTube and Spotify on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at jeffrey.scott_ for daily highlights and clips. Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and follow me on Spotify for the new episodes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.